This is E2B, Energy to Business, a podcast by Opportune, where we bring you in-house expertise that serves all energy sectors. We examine emerging financial and technology trends and provide a broad perspective on ways to stay ahead, create opportunities, and execute market strategies.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of E2B, Energy to Business, an Opportune podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Litwin, the voice of B2B, and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you listening along for some industry thought leadership. As you explore today's topic, make sure that you're heading to our website, opportune.com. Again, opportune.com, as well as subscribing to E2B on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for full recordings in audio format, as well as notifications when we drop new episodes. So on today's episode of Energy to Business, we're excited to be chatting all things NAPE, which is the energy industry's marketplace for the buying, selling, and trading of prospects and producing properties, as we gear up for the 2021 NAPE Summit, which is in person between August 18th and 20th, as well as offering virtual conference experiences between August 9th and September 3rd. So our goal with today's conversation is to provide a big picture look at how NAPE is reflecting the industry's needs, challenges, and opportunities, as well as highlighting the most exciting events and discussion points for this year's show. And we're so lucky to be joined by three guests today, two of whom have a long tenure of leadership with NAPE and the NOC, the NAPE Operators Committee. So first, I'd like to welcome frequent guest of the show, Mr. Steve Hendrickson, president of Ralph E. Davis Associates, an Opportune company. Steve, welcome. Great to have you on.
Thank you, Daniel. Glad to be here.
Yeah. And joining us from the network of NAPE Leadership, I'd like to welcome our other two guests, Grant Johnson, Assistant Chairman of the NAPE Advisory Board and previously Chairman of the NOC in 2015, most recently member of the NOC during the 2020-2021 term. Grant Johnson, great to have you on. How are you?
Great, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our visit.
Absolutely. It's going to be a pleasure breaking down your insights today. And last but not least, we're also joined by Mr. Carl Campbell, ex officio member of the NOC as AAPL First VP. He also previously served as NOC chairman in 2014 and on the NAPE Advisory Board between 2017 and 2021 in various leadership positions. Carl Campbell, great to have you on as well. How are you?
I'm great, Daniel. Thank you so much. It's a privilege to join everyone today.
Yeah, we've got a quality panel here to give us some insights into what we can expect at the show and also intersect the show with how the industry is progressing, where it's facing some roadblocks. So I'm really looking forward to pulling from everyone's experience. Let's go ahead and jump in. We've got a lot to unpack. And these first few questions are going to be for Carl and Grant. Steve, I've got a starter question to pitch your way here in a sec. But Carl, Grant, let's start with y'all here. Can you track your backgrounds in the energy industry and specifically how you landed at NAPE and in NAPE leadership positions, right? What does this conference represent for you in the context of that broader career?
Grant, I think that you might want to lead off on this front since you have been involved with NAPE as a participant since the very beginning of 1993, and I'll hop in as warranted.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Well, I back in 93, I guess, when we started this, I was working for a gentleman named George Alcorn that was very active in another organization, IPAA, that is one of the NAPE partners. And the rumors were out that we were about to have a prospect show for where people would show up in a big gathering, hotel ballroom, and show their prospects, which was absolutely unheard of at the time. And people just were not, it was always something that was done a one-on-one, and the idea of putting your prospect and your maps and seismic and everything out there in the public for competitors and potential prospect generators and potential partners to see all in one place was kind of a scary idea, but it started to catch on, and And so that first year, I by working for Alcorn, I knew all this about this event, and so I went and just walked through the show. It was here in Houston at one of the Galleria hotels, and it was very well attended. Everybody had, I can't remember the numbers of how many people were there and how many prospect booths, but it quickly caught on. And that next year, I had formed Lone Star Production Company, and we showed up in '94, that second year, had a booth, and it was just wonderful. I mean, you had, everybody had to be a little bit careful about what you might show, but there was no better networking place, and this thing just kept getting more and more attention and growing. And we moved from the ballroom. Slowly, they started adding all these little meeting rooms, and it was just a maze of prospect booths throughout that hotel until '99 when they moved it to the George R. Brown. But Carl, what would you add to those early years?
Well, I agree, Grant. I was absolutely not a visionary on that front. When I first heard about NAPE, I was very quizzical in regards to how could anyone go and show proprietary maps without a confidentiality agreement or the ability to protect the investment that you'd made in leases up to that point and do that in an open forum. So I was highly skeptical, to be honest with you, until I attended the first show. And to your point, I think it was amazing to see that first year what a great reception there was, even though it was kind of in a more crude environment in regards to the hotel set up there in the Galleria. But in ensuing years, it continued to grow, and I remember the NAPE staff had to move over and also get room at the other Westin Hotel there in the Galleria area to accommodate the demand. And it was early on, the thing that I noticed the most is the networking component, the ability to meet with people that you hadn't seen in quite some time or hadn't seen in several years, and in an environment that was kind of a relaxing environment to talk shop and look at possible investment opportunities. So from that standpoint, I was hooked fairly early on, but I must admit at the outset, I didn't see it and I missed it. So kind of like why I didn't buy Tesla stock, but, needless to say, it has been a wonderful growth pattern from there. And, after they, outgrew the facilities at the Westin, they moved to the GRB, and was that 98, I believe, 98 or 99, 98, I believe. And it was just something that you would never miss. And I have never missed an NAPE. That is one of the things that I would always attend. Now, unlike Grant, who has been a participant and exhibitor from very early years, we have never exhibited as a company, as a booth, but we would not miss the opportunity to be there to visit with colleagues and to see the ability to meet in one spot and get caught up and look at their investment opportunities.
Now, Steve, I want to pitch something your way, but what does this conference represent to you as an industry professional and one who's been in the industry for several years now? And how do you feel it's going to set the tone for Q3 and Q4 for the industry?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I've been going to NAPE for as long as I can remember. In fact, until Grant just mentioned the early days at the hotel ballroom, I'd even forgotten about that. So it's always been something that I strive to be at. And for many of the same reasons, really, I kind of call it a family reunion of sorts. Great chance to see old colleagues, old friends from the industry. There's a lot of social events, both at NAPE and around the event, that provide opportunity for networking and talking shop or just catching up with friends. But for me, I think one of the most important or one of the most enjoyable parts of NAPE is whenever I go, I start at one end of the hall and I just make it my point, whether it takes all day or part of both days, I'm going to walk the whole floor and see what's going on in the industry. It gives me a great chance to get a sense of what the mood of the upstream industry is and see what new plays might be being developed. And a lot of times we'll see, renewed interest in old plays. It's kind of great to see those things come back and see how new angles are being developed. And of course, there's a whole transaction side to it. There's a chance to talk about potentially doing some deals or at least learning what kind of deals are on the market, what kind of deal structures are in vogue. So those are the kind of the things I get out of it and why I look forward to it so much each year. I think this year is going to be especially good. We've all been cooped up for a year and a half now and haven't had the chance for this sort of face-to-face interaction very much. And commodity prices are better. Deal flow is picking up. So I think there's going to be a lot of excitement, and it'll be very interesting to see how companies are responding to the changing environment.
Steve, I completely agree with your comment there in regards to the need for people to get back out and interact in person. And the wonderful aspect that the NAPE this summer is providing is the hybrid event of being able to also have it pretend along the same time going on with OTC. And I think that is going to be a very helpful addition to kind of broaden the footprint and the awareness of NAPE. And so it should be interesting to see if we continue to add, more participants in the future once people get exposed to it that may have not had the opportunity to attend in person before. So I'm anxious as well. I think that it should be very well attended, and even as we're coming out of this cocoon year that we've been through the last 14 to 18 months.
Carl, Grant, I want to toss another question y'all's way, but having served in leadership over several years now for the conference, are there any special events or methodologies, strategies, anything that is particularly different this year that you think is really standing out and elevating the conference? And really, what are some of the best ways you've seen it evolve in content as well as structure over the years as well?
Well, I think one of the things that, that sometimes overlooked with the NAPE conference is the Global Business Conference. And that is something that is, over the years, has really continued to just develop to be a premier opportunity for people to get together, listen from other industry leaders, and very thought-provoking. Should be well attended this year as well. They've got a fantastic list of speakers lined up for the Global Business Conference. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the NAPE and the OTC kind of joint session that's going to be taking place this year is going to be a real additive to the overall event. And then the expansion into the renewables space. The NAPE staff has just done an extraordinary job in regards to trying to be reactive to market needs and as the industry continues to morph and develop. And this is a really neat added provision to bring the renewable energy folks under the tent at NAPE. So that's very helpful.
Agree with everything that Carl has mentioned. It's just the icebreaker that's on the 18th. There's nothing like that where you get that many industry professionals in one setting. That's, it's, although it's a giant room, you can wander through there and you'll see friends you haven't seen in years, and just a great way to kick off the event. That's one of my favorite parts of the whole event. And I too am really looking forward to this renewable pavilion. Although it's going to be the first year, but it's the way I look at the prospecting, which is what NAPE has was created for. There's a lot of similarities between the prospecting for renewable prospects, in essence, as there are for fossil fuel prospects. So it's going to be interesting to see what kinds of prospects will slowly start to show up at the NAPE event, and the types of groups that are going to be interested in seeing, prospects in that kind of an environment that has worked so well for the fossil fuel prospects for all these years.
I want to open up the conversation a little bit more now, so whoever wants to chime in here, feel free. But one of the things that I really want to highlight about the show is its inaugural Renewable Energy Pavilion. So this is the first time that renewable energy is getting its own dedicated space for sponsors, exhibitors, and attendees to learn more about this growing and ever more scalable side of the industry. I'm curious what all of you see as the most exciting business deals and business opportunities that will lead the renewables conversation this year at the show, and why?
We'll take a shot at that one, Daniel. I think one of the neat things about what's happening in renewables, and for us, we're kind of focused on underground carbon storage, and is the fact that it is such a new, I won't say it's a new technology, but it certainly is an emerging technology. It is one that takes advantage of so many of the skills that we already have in the upstream business, but yet it's really not been widely practiced. There's a handful of international projects, one or two here in the United States. And so it reminds me in some ways of where we were with shales 10 or 15 years ago, and just beginning to see the green shoots of new ideas. I don't really know exactly what to expect in the space. I think there's definitely a lot of interest, and I think it's going to be a big part of our business going forward. I'm excited to see this new pavilion and get a chance to meet some of the other players and start to compare notes and share ideas.
I echo your thoughts, Steve, and just really anxiously looking forward to seeing how this kind of develops and morphs over time with this renewables being added in under the tent. One of the things that we are all faced with in our respective companies is being reactive and also being very proactive in regards to ESG strategies. And I think that the ESG strategies that probably will be provided and the opportunities to explore more of those with other colleagues will be extremely helpful at this year's NAPE event.
And this Grant, I agree. I think that there is going to be a lot of crossover. There's going to be, there's a lot of the same disciplines that are used in both the tidal for solar and wind, especially and even battery storage. The tidal, the land work associated with identifying owners of these properties and securing those rights. So there's just a lot of guys that are already in that space, and it's just it was perfect timing for NAPE to include renewables in this. So I'm excited to see who all comes out that hasn't been there in the past.
I'm glad you brought up ESGs because as a follow-up here to that Renewable Energy Pavilion, I want to better understand some of the pressing challenges that you might see reflected at NAPE this year. So there are three big ones that are on my radar. That would be trying to maximize and understand where to make investments around carbon capture technology, which is still in many ways in its beta phase, hasn't fully been scaled. So understanding how to get in early on those investments, I think, is going to be a big point of conversation. Like y'all mentioned, ESG strategies and understanding how expectations around those at an industry level and also pressure from end users, from consumers, how that might be putting some pressure on the industry as well. And then the third one being optimizing the broader set of portfolios that companies have with renewable energy. So again, carbon capture tech, ESG strategies, and optimizing portfolios with renewables. I'm wondering how y'all see those challenges manifesting in the industry right now, and then more specifically, how you might see that reflected at NAPE this year with some conversations.
Well, I think those are tough questions, right? Because all three of those topics are somewhat in their infancy. And as you look around and see or read about what people think and what's likely to happen, and you can get all sorts of different opinions. I think it's pretty clear that all of them represent forces that are significant and are likely to continue. And so our industry is going to need to respond to all three of them. It's a little tough for me to say exactly how it's going to play out, but I do think there's always benefit in getting your feet on the ground early, starting to develop some experience in an area, and then being prepared to adapt as the winds start to blow in a certain direction. We've certainly seen a lot of cases lately where, as you mentioned, Daniel, how pressure from the public is certainly influencing the large public companies, but we see that in the private world too, that the investors in the private equity funds have ESG demands, I guess would be a fair way to put it, and that's starting to affect the way that those funds deal with the companies that they back. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, but I do think it's definitely still evolving.
Steve, if I might add on, I think you're spot on in regards to the landscape that's developing in front of us, and the stakeholder involvement in fossil fuel development has more taken a definite activism phase that haven't seen before, at least in recent time. And so it is critically important to provide additional opportunities to learn more, to be more reflective, to be the ability to pivot and do things in a more the most thoughtful way possible. And so consequently, ESG has been something that's been reflective in all major boardrooms for quite some time, and really has taken center stage in the last couple of years. And that's not going away. And the tailwinds as far as capital is concerned, I mean, whether you're talking about shareholder, stakeholder capital, or you're talking about private equity or institutional capital, those winds are strongly moving in the favor of renewables, as we all know. And so it would be silly not to fully investigate opportunities to look at and get involved on the front end, as you mentioned.
Yeah, to that point, Carl, great point. But to that point, the NAPE Business Conference, one of their topics and one of their sessions is finding new synergy in energy, and this panel was put together to address a lot of that. And so, NCAP, one of the big private equity sponsors here in Houston, has just started a new energy transition fund, and we have one of their vice presidents will be here to talk about the kinds of things they will be doing. So it's going to be interesting to hear the perspective from a group that has raised money for the fossil fuel part for 30 plus years, and now moving into this space, why they're doing it, and the kinds of things they're looking to put the money in, along with one of the big groups. One of the other panelists in there is one of the VPs at Shell, and that's going to be moderated by one of the top renewable attorneys out there with Norton Rose Fulbright out of Austin, Becky Diffin. So it's going to be a really exciting panel that will be part of the business conference, prior to our event. So anyway, it's just going to be a great time, as NAPE always is, a great time to kind of learn what's going on in the industry, where things are changing, especially after we talked about earlier being cooped up for here a year and a half. It would be a great coming out party, I believe.
Completely agree with you, Grant. One of the things, another topic within that global conference is the spectrum of political influence in the energy industry, which we know is certainly an oppressive one at this particular point from a fossil fuel development. And we need to just have a broader discussion, right? One of the things that that I think all of us have talked about in the past is the fact that we've done a very poor job in communicating the critical importance of the fossil fuel industry to the overall, not only just the national economy, but the global economy as a whole. And so, while we're all in favor of a all-in type of fuel mix in regards to renewables and fossil fuel, energy providing is not going to go away anytime soon. And so we're going to be here for a while. We just need to make sure that we more fully educate the public on the benefits of that, but at the same time, doing the best we possibly can to work on sequestration, to work on, minimizing any kind of adverse environmental impact that, the production of the wonderful products that oil and gas provide. Make sure that we do our best to minimize any kind of negative contact in that regard.
All right, everyone. This has been great so far. I've got one last main question, and then I'll open it up for a very open-ended kind of final thoughts. But what I want to highlight here is AAPG is putting on a workshop at NAPE on the 17th. And that is going to be focusing on emerging trends in oil and gas, aka the next generation of challenges and opportunities for the industry. I want to pitch a few of them your way to see how you think they're shaping the industry today, and more importantly, what you think industry professionals should be focusing their time and resources on in response to these trends, right? Where do the deals make sense? Where do they not? Is this a buzzy trend with no substance, or is this a key one that is really going to drive the industry forward? So let's start with this first one. It's a bit high level, so feel free to expand on it how you see fit. But the trend of trying to balance your assets as an energy company and player for both short-term opportunities, responding to where the industry is at now, but then also balancing your assets for long-term viability and trying to predict some of those larger shifts, maybe away from traditional assets toward renewables or any other long-term shift for the industry. So again, balancing assets for either short-term opportunities versus long-term viability. How do you see that kind of trend actually materializing in practice? And then how do you see that being reflected at NAPE this year?
One of the things that I've noticed here in the last 6 months or so is that there is a lot of interest, even by the small operators to this renewable push that we have. And so I think that there are a number of groups that have put projects together in the past, and I'll count us in this group, that's kind of our specialty, using some of those same skills to look at how you might put together a renewable or carbon capture type of a project. So I think there's a lot of push right now for that. I mean, the people are looking at where you might store that. A lot of questions are being asked of companies that own these old reservoirs that are depleted. So I think there's a lot of room for new entrants into that, and I think a lot of the fossil fuel focused companies for all these years are the perfect guys to be doing that. So I do see. I see a lot of interest in there by guys you would have never thought would be interested in that. So we will see that at NAPE. You'll see who's looking at those kind of projects and why, and how they're going to go about it. So that, to me, I think that we will see these companies that have been focused on oil and gas projects for all these years starting to look at how they might intermix in some more sustainable, environmentally friendly type approach into their business model.
Grant, if I may add too, one of the things, and we talked about this just recently, but, balancing assets for short-term opportunities. I mean, again, oil and gas is not going to go away. One example I like to bring about is, the incredible year that we have been through and we're now emerging from, thank goodness. When global demand fell by almost 30 million barrels a day, which had devastating impacts to, the commodity price for oil and for gas, but mainly for oil. You think about that, we were burning prior to the pandemic really taking hold from a global perspective of almost 100 million barrels a day. Okay, we lose 30 million barrels of demand, and that's substantial, and that's what it had a tremendous impact on commodity prices. But we were still using 70 million barrels a day just to keep the grid open. So again, I think there's plenty of room for improvement and space for renewables, but oil and gas will be here for quite some time. And so that's something that we always need to look at when we're trying to maximize our portfolios in regards to holding on to conventional or unconventional opportunities that we currently exist as compared to abandoning those and moving strictly to renewables. There's a fine balance. And again, as I mentioned before, there's plenty of room for both. But I'm just excited to see kind of an all-in discussion for people to be thoughtful and reflective of what it really takes to keep the global economy up and running.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that just one, kind of one thought about what I'm kind of hopeful to see when we get to NAPE, which is, if you think back, we've kind of gone through this period of increased focus on investor returns, maybe not as much interest in growth in companies. And so just for the sake of growth, right, there's a little bit more capital discipline being exhibited or is desired by investors. And as a result, we also saw a number of consolidations start to occur. So whereas last year we had a pretty slow M&A market on I'd say the small to mid-sized deals, I think this year with some consolidations behind us and prices a little bit better, I think we'll start to see some of those types of assets come to the market. And, I'm always interested to see what's on the market and what kind of deals are getting done. As an engineer, I always get excited about seeing those things. So it's been a little bit dry for the last year. So it'll be fun to see what folks are putting on the table.
One of the other trends I want to get y'all's thoughts on that's going to be represented again at this AAPG workshop at NAPE is trying to maneuver some data strategies for strategic planning more and more as different operations at the edge of the energy industry get more powerful and start to feed more data back to centralized hubs. And just as the back-end data management of the energy industry is revitalized by investments in AI, the cloud, etc., and even the expansion of 5G. What we're seeing is several energy players trying to understand what are we supposed to do with all of this data? How do we not only funnel it, but then also make sense of it and then turn it into actionable strategies for future investments? So thoughts there. What do you think industry professionals should be focusing their time and resources on in response to that trend of trying to maneuver data strategies for strategic planning?
Great question, Daniel. From my perspective, and I think that, I know that Steve and Grant probably know this better than any, but data is one of the most important critical aspects that we all deal with, especially in our industry. And as we have continued to try and refine and be good stewards of capital in regards to opportunities that come across our desks, we need to make sure we're handling that data and being able to filter through it in a manageable way. And thankfully, there are some really new and exciting platforms that have come to the forefront over the last few years that are very helpful in that regard. But it is something that we can't live without, and we will continue to utilize. And to your point and question in regards to AI, I think that is probably one of the most exciting areas to be able to help filter through just the immense amount of data that we have available at our fingerprints. It's a little bit daunting to think about just all of the different amounts of information that are available and how to use it properly. So AI will also be very helpful in that regard, and just trying to manage the different databases that we have.
Yeah, it's very challenging and very exciting at the same time. I was actually speaking to some new hires the other day, and gave me a chance to talk, I guess kind of illustrate how old I was. And I was talking about how at the beginning of my career, I was at Shell, and if you wanted a desktop computer, you had to write up a justification for it. And, how things have certainly changed. But even way back then, your job was about data. How can you take all of this information that oil and gas wells and logs and seismic and on and on and on, financial data, how can you make sense out of this? And it's really been the story my whole career, really. It's just been as technology, computer technology got stronger, software was developed to harness that power, and solutions were developed how you could learn about those and employ them in your business. That's been an ongoing part of the oil and gas business ever since I've been involved. And it's just getting more complex because of some of the new technologies. It's just like so many things, it grows exponentially, and there's so many different ways to approach a problem. Trying to figure out which of these technologies can be deployed and be deployed in a way that actually is going to save time and save money and make better decisions. It is a big challenge, but it's a lot of fun, and we try to keep our ear to the ground and make sure we're taking advantage of the things that that make sense in what we do. And I'm sure the guys that are on the operating side are doing so as well.
Well, and Steve, to your point, as a small E&P group that just seems to focus on the immediate stuff in front of us every day, it takes an event like NAPE for our team to be exposed to all of these new data strategies and services that are out there that can help us, and where we wouldn't necessarily go out and look for some of that stuff. There's no better place than NAPE to see, because everybody is showcasing the newest and best. So we do look forward to that aspect of the show for sure.
And then last main point I've got for y'all is trying to understand what should industry professionals focus some of their resources on when trying to respond to disruptions to financing approaches in the energy industry today. As you answer that, if you could just lay out a few of those key disruptions and then where you think professionals should be really paying attention, as well as, where should they be putting their chips, right?
Daniel, I'll take that question initially, and I will tell you that capital is extremely scarce for upstream E&P companies. That has just been a consequential shift of ESG and the focus on renewables. So we have to be extremely mindful as an upstream E&P of how we're going to manage financing of current opportunities that we have, as well as future opportunities that we would like to be a part of. And so, that again, like every landscape we've talked about up to this point, will always shift and morph. But the near term, it's challenging for E&P companies. So, one of the things that we need to do is to look at various options and to see what other options there will be available for us, other than just financing things straightly out of free cash flow, which is kind of what everyone is focused on right now. And we don't want to repeat a position of getting too far out in front of our skis, so to speak, in regards to the development of opportunities and outspending your cash reserves. But this is a very, very expensive business. And it's very, very complex, and it takes a tremendous amount of capital to get anything done. And so it weighs heavily on us to make sure that we are making the right decisions and doing that in a thoughtful manner.
I appreciate what Carl led off with. We are a exploration-focused group, and there has been no time harder to raise exploration capital during this last 18 months. truly believe that's changing, but and getting better and better. But it has been really tough, and I think that that creates opportunities. So for those that do have capital, that have figured out where to obtain capital that matches the risk that's associated with some of the upstream stuff that we're all looking for. There's some exciting new plays that are going on out there, and NAPE's where we're going to see all of that, all of those new exciting plays. And so for us, that's where we learn of these new capital providers or new capital sources. We're going to learn about them. It's things at events like NAPE. So it's important to us to be there and to figure out who's looking for that. Does have some risk appetite, but there's no better time to be doing that when very few are doing some of this upstream, more risky exploration efforts. So we're looking forward to the show and hoping to be able to find the right kind of partners for the different things that we're doing. And back to the business conference. I mean, that was another key panel is this private equity panel that's kind of talking about how things have changed within their space and what to look for and what differences and changes we can all expect to see. So that's what these gatherings are for.
And I think on that note, that does it for our conversation. I'll open the floor here for just one last bit of closing commentary, but as we gear up for the show next month, what are y'all most excited to see? If you got to give us a quick elevator pitch, right? Your favorite booth that you're looking forward to seeing, favorite event, or maybe favorite company you're looking to reconnect with. Give us that fave and why.
I'll take a quick crack at this one and leave it to the guys to wrap it up. But I always really get a kick out of seeing some of the more interesting exploration plays. There are a lot of guys that work some areas that, don't make all the headlines, but they work them for a long time. They put a lot of interesting ideas together, and it's always a pleasure to visit with them and understand, how they came up with their idea and what they have behind it. It's just always very interesting to me to learn about those and see the product of their good work.
I agree, Steve. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one of the things that has been tenet with NAPE from the outset, and again under the staff leadership that NAPE has shown over the years. One of the catchphrases that's so important is it's where deals happen. Success is not just what you know, but it's who you know. And it's, again, one of those things of being able to connect face-to-face with various companies and individuals to kind of bring that humanity back to our industry and being able to establish long-lasting relationships that in some cases last nearly a lifetime. So it's extremely exciting that we're going to have this opportunity to get back together. And I am thrilled to see how NAPE turns out this summer.
And Carl, I agree. It's I've really missed this. NAPE has been the lifeblood of our business for all of these years, and we go there with a plan. We'll put a prospect or a prospect area up, or a trend, or something that causes people to stop by and start the dialogue. But at the end of the day, you walk out of that event and you will have reacquainted yourself with people that you hadn't seen in years, that were too ready to be out. I mean, they too were ready to be out there and tell about their new jobs. You get to see friends that it's just hard to get out there and connect with everybody that you want to, unless you have a gathering like this. So I can't sleep before the night. I've told Carl that But I can't sleep before that first night of NAPE. I'm so excited to get there and see everybody. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I, too, am very thankful for the staff at NAPE that do all of this work to put on this kind of a fabulous show for guys like us that enjoy it so much.
And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up our conversation today. Thank you so much to the three of you for giving us this overview of NAPE 2021, what you're all excited for, and more importantly, how you see it reflecting some of the broader trends and challenges in the energy industry today. So thank you again to our three guests, Steve Hendrickson, president of Ralph E. Davis Associates, an opportune company, Grant Johnson, assistant chairman of the NAPE Advisory Board, and Carl Campbell, ex officio member of the NOC as AAPL First VP. Thank you again to all of you. And Steve, if folks want to find out a little bit more about Ralph E. Davis, or maybe they want to connect at the show, how can they do so?
Oh, yeah. Great. Thanks, Daniel. Well, we will definitely be at the show. We'll have a booth. I'm sure we'll be easy to find. And, of course, opportune.com is where you can find out more about Opportune and about Ralph E. Davis.
And then same question for Grant and Carl. If folks want to connect at the show or they want to learn more about some of the work you do outside of NAPE, how can they do so? Grant, we'll start with you.
We're have a company called Lone Star Production Company, and it's at lonestarproduction.com. And I'll let Carl give the NAPE contact information.
Well, yeah, it's napeexpo.com is how you can register for the event, and we'd love to see everyone that would be able to attend or has any interest in attending. There's also, if you can't be here in person, there is a virtual option, but there is no substitute to being there in person. So strongly recommend that. As far as personally, our company is called Alamo Resources. And I can be reached at Carl at alamoresources.com.
Fantastic. Steve, Grant, and Carl, thank you again to the three of you. It's really been a pleasure today.
Thank you, Daniel.
Daniel, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of E2B, Energy to Business, an Opportune podcast. If you like what you heard and want to listen to previous episodes, make sure that you're heading to our website, opportune.com. Again, opportune.com, as well as subscribing to Energy to Business on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm your host, Daniel Litwin, the voice of B2B, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Energy to Business.